Hello again, it's Simon, and this week I thought I'd take a chance to talk to you about sprint orienteering, seeing as the North Island Secondary School is coming up and there will be a sprint course there. So to start off with, what is the difference between sprint orienteering and normal orienteering? There's a couple really. First of all, there's the speed at which everything's done at. So a normal orienteering course might have a winning time of 40 minutes, an hour for like a medium or middle or a long, whereas a sprint will often be 15 to 20 minutes. In addition, if you have a look at terrain, it'll often be much more obvious features, but the terrain itself might be more complex. So I've got here the map from the national sprint. If you have a look, there's a lot of like passages and stuff like that, but it's all buildings and paved areas and distinctive trees, sections of distinctive trees, that kind of things that you can see. But the trade-off is, of course, because all the features are obvious, it's a sprint though, you'll have to be running it faster. So, second thing is, how do you adapt your orienteering techniques to work on a sprint course? So what that means is having a look at it, what attack points am I looking for? And those are usually the same, except you'll be looking for buildings or like corners of buildings and other things. And often, because of the nature of it, it'll be a pretty obvious feature you'll see, and you can say that's my feature. The other thing is route choices, is where it gets kind of interesting. So the difference between a good route choice and a bad route choice on a sprint is often going to be 2 to 3 seconds. Maybe a little bit more if you're not as fast running. Maybe a bit less if someone spent a lot of time planning it and going to make them exactly equal. And normally those route choices will be binary, so it'll be like a left or a right, as opposed to the normal left, right, middle. So a good example of this is control 1 to 2 here. So you've got the left route choice, which does something like this. And you've got the right route choice, which comes around this way. And you think about things like, am I going downstairs? Or am I going round too many corners? Because the nature of sprint courses means that each time you turn a corner, you lose a noticeable amount of time, and if you're slow going downstairs, or you can't just jump the set of them, you lose time there. But as I said, the difference is usually sort of 2 to 3 seconds, and so if you've stopped or slowed down to just think about your route choice, you may in fact lose more time than it's worth making the wrong decision and just running it. The other things to look out for on sprints, there's a couple of things. First of all is what we like to call traps. And that's where there's something that makes an obvious looking route not quite work properly, or the control is just not quite, or is like in a little corner somewhere, so you have to know what you're looking for. So a good example of that would be 11 to 12. If you have a look at the map on this scale, you think, oh yeah, I can just run through this sort of open area here and through between 11 and 12. But then of course when you zoom in, and I'll scroll across so you guys can see, that route choice goes actually through 2 different walls, so you couldn't make that route choice. So in fact what you have to do is either then come around this way or around this way. Just to add to that, 12 itself is tucked in between the 2 walls, so you need to know you're looking for that bit in there. The other thing to think about with sprint courses is that there's a lot of controls here and it's done a lot faster. So that you want to do is know that you're heading to the right control. So whether that's you stop and read your control descriptions if you're not sure, or whether it's just making sure and checking, oh yeah, for number 9 I'm looking for a paved area and a building corner, rather than stop and go, okay, 115 building outside corner, northeast outside corner. You go, okay, I'm looking for a building on the corner, and you can see that roughly from the circle. So this particular map, don't be intimidated by it, because this was the Nationals map. And so for North Island Secondary Schools, we'll probably be using a school of some kind. And so the terrain will look a little bit less like a huge maze of buildings, and there'll be more like having 2 or 3 buildings to look at. So if I just scroll up to first half of the course, you have a look, there's not that many buildings, but there are lots of choices. Do I go left or right round them? And again, the speed at which you can make those decisions will oftentimes dictate how well you do in the race. The other thing to think about is that there might be a map flip. So if you have a look, 7 to 8, there's no 9 on this map. It just sort of stops at 8, and there's no line coming out of it. Now the control descriptions here say map flip, but they might not on your event. And so if you can't see control 9, but you can see control 8, you've probably got a map flip. Again, no line coming out of it means that you definitely have a map flip. And so what the trick is to realize that control 8 will be on both halves of the map. And so what you can do is, as you come into 7, you find 7 as you think about your route to 8. So yeah, I'm going to go right. I'm going to go right, and I'm going to come out up the stairs between these two buildings. And I'm just going to head for this other building up here on my left in front of me. So as you're coming up between these two buildings and coming through around here, you've seen your building you're looking for. You actually flip the map before you get to 8. Because you can still see 8 here as you're coming through, and so you still know where you're going to. You just don't have on the map where you've been, but that's not important because you don't need to look at that. And then as you're running through, you can plan ahead and think, 8 to 9, how am I getting there? Am I going to go left, or am I going to go right? So if you have a map flip again, just flip the map about a half a leg early, and that way you can still see where the control is you're going to. You can plan ahead a little bit. And sprints oftentimes do actually come down to planning ahead, because that's how you can see the traps if there are any there. So to summarize, with sprints, they're faster, much faster. The terrain's a lot more obvious, but done again at speed. So you're trading off how fast can I run and how fast can I navigate. And often a lot of the route choices and thoughts should be thought in terms of lefts and rights. You know, am I going left around this building or right around this building? Because that's the simplest way to think about things. So it means you're wasting the least time. And anyway, I'll see you guys next week, where I'll do a video on relays to sort of wrap things up and get you guys ready for the North Island secondary schools. So until then, see you.